The Switch and Switch 2 are basically indie game heaven right now. Whether you're into brutal action, chill exploration, or deep RPGs, there's something here for everyone. So let's count down the 25 best indie games you need to play on Nintendo's platforms right now. If you love Shovel Knight, this is the next big thing from the same studio. Mina the Hollower came out May 29th, 2026, and it's basically what you get if classic Zelda and Castlevania had a Game Boy Color baby. You play as Mina, a character known as a Hollower who crashes onto a cursed island called Tenebrous Isle and has to save it from whatever darkness has taken over the place. The gameplay is top-down action-adventure, just like the old Zelda games. You're exploring interconnected regions, fighting over 25 bosses, uncovering secrets, and collecting 60 different trinkets that tweak how you play. The combat has you whipping enemies and switching between different sidearms, and there's a full level-up system to grow stronger over time. The world is huge, too. More total screens than all of Shovel Knight Treasure Trove combined. It's a love letter to retro gaming done with serious craft. Planet of Lana II dropped March 5th, 2026, and it's a stunning cinematic puzzle platformer that picks up 2 years after the first game. You're back with Lana and her cat-like companion Mui, navigating a world that's been reshaped by a robot invasion and the power struggles that followed. There's no spoken dialogue at all. The whole story is told through visuals, music, and the way you interact with the world. That sounds limiting, but it works beautifully. The puzzles are clever and physics-based. You'll be hypnotizing creatures and controlling hybrid robots to solve problems. Lana has new movement abilities like wall jumps and run slides, and the companion controls for Mui are more precise and useful than ever. The game takes you through snowy mountains, underwater sections, and forest communities. Composer Takeshi Furukawa, who also did The Last Guardian, is back on the soundtrack, and it shows. Nine Souls flew under a lot of people's radars. That's a mistake, because this game is something else. It's a hand-drawn 2D Metroidvania set in a world called New Kunlun. Think Eastern mythology smashed into cyberpunk, which they call Taopunk. You play as Yi, a warrior who wakes up from a long sleep and sets out on a revenge mission to hunt down 9 powerful rulers called the Souls. The combat is directly inspired by Sekiro. It's all about deflecting enemy attacks at the right moment, then charging up your bow and exploding them with a talisman. It's brutal if you play it straight, but deeply satisfying when you get the rhythm down. The world is beautifully interconnected, the lore goes incredibly deep, and the hand-drawn art style with anime and manga influences makes every area feel distinct. There are adjustable difficulty sliders if the parry system feels unforgiving, which is a nice touch. Katana Zero is still one of the best action games you can play on Switch. You're a samurai assassin in a neo-noir city, taking on contracts one bloody room at a time. The gameplay is lightning fast. You can slow down time, deflect bullets back at enemies, and use environmental hazards to clear rooms in one clean run. The twist is, every level is basically one-hit kill for you, too. So you're planning your route, dying, and retrying until you find that perfect flow state run that feels cinematic. The story is told through dialogue between missions, and it gets genuinely dark and interesting. There are memory gaps, a mysterious drug called Chronos, and a handler who may not have your best interests at heart. The pixel art is sharp, the soundtrack is a moody synthwave banger, and the conversations have this cool mechanic where you can interrupt NPCs mid-sentence. It's short, but absolutely tight. Blasphemous 2. If you're into dark, grotesque Metroidvanias with incredible art, this one needs to be in your library. Set in a twisted religious fantasy world called Custodia, you play as the Penitent One, a silent knight returning to face a new miracle threatening the land. The game starts with you choosing between 3 weapons, each with completely different playstyles, and you find and unlock the other 2 as you explore. The combat is satisfying and tight, requiring good timing to parry and punish enemies. The world is full of disturbing imagery pulled straight from Spanish Baroque art, and the enemy designs are some of the most creative and unsettling you'll find anywhere. Exploration is rewarded constantly. There are hidden abilities, side quests, and NPCs with entire backstories buried in the lore. It improves on the first game in almost every way, with smoother movement, more varied environments, and a more connected world layout. Minishoot Adventures. This one was shadow dropped during Nintendo's Indie World Showcase on March 3rd, 2026, and it earned a 98% positive rating on Steam before it ever came to Switch. Minishoot Adventures is a top-down twin-stick shooter built around the exploration loop of old-school Zelda. You pilot a tiny little spaceship through a handcrafted world, fighting through dungeons, rescuing your captured friends, and upgrading your ship to access new areas. The bullet hell combat is crispy and fun. You're dodging and shooting in every direction while working out boss patterns. But the heart of the game is exploration. There are secrets everywhere. The map opens up as you upgrade, and the whole thing has this cheerful, colorful aesthetic that makes it feel approachable, even when the difficulty spikes. It was made by a two-person team, which makes the overall quality even more impressive. Mio, Memories in Orbit is a 2.5D Metroidvania published by Focus Entertainment that doesn't get talked about nearly enough. You play as Mio, a robot on a massive ship called the Vessel, which used to be full of life but now feels eerily quiet. The ship is run by consciousnesses called Voices minds that were implanted into pearls, but the system that gives them life is decaying, and robots are starting to disconnect and die. Mio's journey is about piecing together what happened and trying to stop it. The gameplay is your classic Metroidvania loop, exploring, finding new abilities, backtracking to areas you couldn't reach before. The 2.5D visual style gives it a unique look. The world has a melancholic, introspective atmosphere that matches the story perfectly, and the environmental storytelling is quietly brilliant. It doesn't shout at you, it just builds this sad, beautiful picture of a dying world, one room at a time. Bollock's Pit sold 400,000 copies almost immediately, which makes complete sense after you play it. It's a roguelike where you use a ball to smash enemies, which sounds dead simple, but there's a whole city builder layer underneath. The story is that a meteor hit the city of Balbalon and left a massive pit full of enemies. You dive in, battle through waves of monsters by bouncing and evolving your ball, collecting loot, and then bring that loot back to rebuild your city. The city has over 70 buildings that give you new abilities, characters, and power-ups for future runs. Each playable character you recruit changes how the game plays completely. There are deserts, frozen caverns, and forest biomes, each with their own enemy types and hazards. The synergies between different upgrades and builds are wild. You'll stumble into busted combinations that make you feel unstoppable. It's the kind of game where one run turns into 6 runs without you noticing. Pizza Tower. You play as Peppino Spaghetti, an anxious Italian chef whose pizza restaurant is threatened by a giant pizza tower built by the villain Pizza Face. The gameplay is completely unhinged in the best way. It's a 2D platformer where speed and momentum are everything. Peppino runs, slides, dives, and body slams his way through levels, grabbing enemies and using them as weapons or shields. Each level ends with an escape sequence, where you have to race to the exit before everything explodes. The art style is pure chaos, loud, cartoonish, and bursting with personality. It's inspired by old Wario Land games and captures that frantic energy perfectly. The level design is incredibly creative. The controls feel great once they click, and it has some of the funniest enemy designs in any game ever. Absolum, from the team behind Streets of Rage 4, and they called it a rogue-em-up, meaning it takes classic side-scrolling beat-em-up combat and wraps it in a roguelike structure. The world is Talum, a realm shattered by a magical disaster that gave the tyrant Sun King Azra his opening to enslave wizards and conquer everything. You pick from 4 playable characters, a necromancer warrior, a dwarf fighter, a wizard frog, and a spectral skirmisher, each with totally different movesets and playstyles. Every run, you pick a path through branching levels, fight groups of enemies with combos, parries, and special abilities, and then die and come back stronger with meta progression upgrades. The hand-drawn animation is absolutely gorgeous, and the action is fluid and punchy. Composer Gareth Coker handles the music, and it's excellent. It supports co-op too, which makes the whole thing even better. Cult of the Lamb, a creative mix of action, roguelike progression, and management gameplay. Players take control of a resurrected lamb who must build a loyal cult while exploring dangerous regions filled with enemies, secrets, powerful bosses, and valuable resources. The game constantly switches between 2 addictive gameplay loops. One moment, you are fighting through randomly generated dungeons using different weapons, abilities, and upgrades. In the next, you are managing your cult by constructing buildings, gathering resources, performing rituals, and keeping your followers happy. This balance creates a rewarding sense of progression that keeps every session feeling fresh. Combined with its distinctive art style, dark humor, memorable soundtrack, and frequent content updates, Cult of the Lamb delivers one of the most unique and entertaining indie experiences you can play on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. Blueprints was shadow dropped on Switch on March 3rd, 2026, and it's one of the most unique puzzle games in years. You inherit a mysterious mansion, and your goal is simple: reach Room 46. The catch is, the mansion rearranges itself every single day. You explore it in first person, drafting rooms from a set of random cards each time you come to a new doorway. Your daily steps are limited, so every decision about which room to place and which direction to move matters. Spend too many steps in the wrong places, and you'll lock yourself out of progress. The puzzles hidden inside the rooms are clever and layered: riddles, locks, codes, and secrets that build on each other across multiple runs. Winning here isn't just about reflexes, it's about reading the layout, managing resources, and slowly accumulating knowledge about how the mansion actually works. It won Best Indie Game at the Golden Joystick Awards. It's patient, strange, and genuinely unlike anything else out there. Sea of Stars came out August 29th, 2023, and it was an instant classic. It's a turn-based RPG made in the style of SNES-era games like Chrono Trigger, built by the same studio that made The Messenger. You follow 2 young warriors, Valir and Zale, who are children of the solstice, born with the power to combine sunlight and moonlight into a force that can fight off creatures called Dwellers. The story expands well beyond that initial hook and takes the characters to some genuinely surprising places. In battles, timing your button presses on attacks adds extra damage, and you can break enemy locks by hitting them with the right attack types. The world is gorgeous 2D pixel art with detailed lighting and water effects that feel modern despite the retro style. There are towns, dungeons, an open sea to sail, and loads of optional side content. The music by Eric W. Brown is excellent. It's a comfort game that also has real depth, one of the best traditional RPGs in years. Vampire Survivors is one of those games that sounds too simple to be real. You move, your weapons fire automatically, you survive as long as possible. That's it. But underneath that simplicity is an insanely addictive loop. You pick a character, each with unique starting weapons, and spend about 30 minutes in a level being swarmed by increasingly overwhelming waves of monsters. You level up constantly, choosing new weapons and upgrades, trying to hit specific combinations that evolve your weapons into godlike instruments of chaos. The builds are the whole game when 2 specific items combine into something completely broken and you're wiping the entire screen every second. It's one of the most satisfying feelings in gaming. New characters, weapons, and stages are unlocked as you play, and there's a ridiculous amount of content hiding underneath the simple presentation. It's perfect for handheld mode, because a run is exactly the right length for a commute. Tunic Tunic is one of the most clever game designs in recent memory. You play as a small fox in a world that's completely unexplained. There's no real language you can read, no clear objective given to you, and the game doesn't hold your hand at all. What you find throughout the world are pages of the actual in-game instruction manual, and piecing together what those pages mean is a huge part of the experience. The gameplay is isometric action-adventure, think early Zelda meets Dark Souls. Combat is tough, you have limited healing items, and death costs you resources. But the real meat of the game is discovery. Almost everything is a secret, from how certain systems work to entire hidden mechanics that the game never explicitly tells you about. The world is beautiful and layered, and the moment things start clicking together feels incredible. It's a game about the joy of figuring things out, and it absolutely nails that feeling from start to finish. Cuphead is still jaw-dropping to look at. Every single frame is hand-drawn and inked in the style of 1930s rubber hose cartoons. You play as Cuphead, a little gambling addict who owes his soul to the devil, and you have to collect soul contracts from a bunch of bosses to pay the debt. The game is almost entirely boss fights. You run through short platforming sections to reach each boss, and then learn their patterns through repeated attempts. And it will kill you. A lot. The difficulty is real and unforgiving, but the satisfaction of finally cracking a boss after dozens of deaths is huge. Each boss is wildly creative and packed with animation phases, surprises, and visual details you'll only catch on your 20th attempt. The DLC, The Delicious Last Course, adds a whole new island and an entirely new playable character, and it's some of the best content in the game. There's nothing else that looks like Cuphead. Nothing. Goodnight Universe is one of the strangest and most memorable experiences on this list. You play as Isaac, a 6-month-old baby who is just starting to realize he has psychic powers. The game is first person, which immediately makes it feel unlike anything else. You're seeing the world from an infant's perspective, tiny and low to the ground, everything oversized and strange. The gameplay is built around using those psychic abilities to interact with your environment. The story gets into genuinely weird and emotional territory as the implications of being this tiny being with this enormous power sink in. Lewis Pullman voices Isaac, and that casting alone tells you the game has something real to say. It's more of a narrative-driven adventure than an action game, but the way it makes you feel small and powerful at the same time is quietly brilliant. It's short, but it leaves a real impression.
Happy snow peas, 5K, 16K metal.
Dave the Diver became one of those unexpected word-of-mouth hits that everyone was talking about. You play as Dave, a chubby diver who explores a mysterious sea trench during the day and runs a sushi restaurant in the evening. Those two halves shouldn't work together, but they absolutely do. Diving is a roguelite-ish loop where you descend into procedurally adjusted waters, harpoon fish and rare creatures, avoid sharks and sea monsters, and collect ingredients. Then at night, you manage the restaurant, serving customers, hiring staff, and upgrading equipment using the day's haul. The story escalates in wild directions, involving ancient civilizations and a cast of eccentric characters. There are also dozens of minigames, side quests, and optional missions woven throughout. The art is gorgeous, the tone is light and funny, and the loop of diving and cooking never stops feeling satisfying, no matter how many hours you sink in. It's one of the most charming games of the last few years. SteamWorld Heist II might be the best game in the entire SteamWorld series. It's a turn-based tactics game where you command a crew of steam-powered robots on missions across a flooded world. You're playing as Captain Leeway, dealing with a dying ocean and a military faction that's making everything worse. In battle, every shot is manually aimed. You physically line up your shots, bounce bullets off walls, and try to chain ricochet kills. It sounds simple, but the skill ceiling is real. Between missions, you explore an open ocean on your submarine, find new crew members, grab upgrades, and uncover the bigger story. Each crew member has a class with unique abilities, and building the right team for each job is part of the fun. The writing is witty, the characters are likable, the soundtrack is a jazzy delight, and the whole production quality is punching well above indie weight. It's one of the most polished tactics games available on Switch. Outbound is one of the most relaxing games on this list. Set in a utopian near future, you start with an empty electric camper van and build a life on wheels. There's no combat. The whole game is about peaceful exploration and gradually building your mobile home. You drive through a colorful open world across diverse biomes, collecting resources, crafting new parts for your van, and unlocking better technology over time. The van is powered by solar, wind, or water energy, so managing your energy sources is part of the strategy. You can play entirely solo or bring up to 3 friends in online co-op, which changes the whole feel. Suddenly you're coordinating who builds what and splitting up to explore different areas. The world is big and beautiful. There are iconic landmarks to discover across each biome, and the whole thing has this incredibly chill vibe that just melts stress away. For anyone who wants a break from games trying to kill you, Outbound is perfect. Chained Echoes was made by one person. Let that sink in. One developer built an entire SNES-era style RPG that rivals the classics that inspired it. Set in the continent of Volandis, the story follows a group of characters caught in a world constantly ravaged by war between 3 kingdoms. There are giant mechs, political betrayal, and a story that genuinely takes risks with where it goes. The battle system uses a heat gauge mechanic. You manage an overdrive bar during combat to stay in an optimal range. Go too hot or too cold, and you get penalties. It rewards active attention rather than just mashing attacks. The world is long and packed easily 30 to 40 hours of content. Towns, dungeons, flying mechs you pilot across the world map, it covers so much ground. The pixel art is gorgeous and clearly made with love for the genre. For anyone who grew up with Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, this is as good as that era gets with modern sensibilities. Slay the Spire basically invented a whole genre. It's a deck-building roguelike where you climb a procedurally generated tower, picking cards after each battle to build your deck, finding relics that change your strategy, and fighting increasingly dangerous enemies until you reach the boss, or die, and start over. The genius is how every run is different. 4 playable characters, each with their own card pools, random events, shop offerings, and relic combinations, mean no 2 climbs feel the same. The strategy goes incredibly deep. You're not just collecting good cards, you're building synergies and making sure your deck doesn't become bloated. The difficulty has 3 ascending challenge levels once you beat the base game, and the community has been playing this for years because the depth is real. It's one of those games where you lose and immediately understand exactly why, which makes trying again feel natural. Runs are just long enough to feel complete without demanding hours. Celeste remains one of the greatest indie games ever made. You play as Madeline, a young woman climbing Celeste Mountain. On the surface, it's a precision platformer. You run, jump, and dash through screens filled with lethal obstacles. The mechanics are tight and fair, and dying sends you right back to the start of the small room you're in, so failure is never frustrating for long. But the real story is about anxiety, self-doubt, and the internal struggle of feeling like you're fighting yourself. The mountain externalizes Madeline's mental state, and the narrative handles that subject with real care and honesty. Each chapter introduces a new mechanic that adds complexity, and the optional B-side and C-side levels are some of the hardest platforming challenges in gaming for those who want them. The pixel art is beautiful and expressive. The music by Lena Raine is genuinely stunning. Hollow Knight Silksong. This time, players step into the role of Hornet, whose speed, agility, and acrobatic abilities create a very different experience from the original game. The world is filled with interconnected environments, hidden secrets, mysterious characters, and dangerous enemies that constantly encourage exploration beyond the main path. Combat is fast and precise, combining quick attacks, aerial movement, special tools, and skill-based boss battles that test both reflexes and strategy. Every new area introduces fresh challenges, upgrades, and discoveries that make progression feel meaningful throughout the journey. Combined with its stunning, hand-drawn art style, atmospheric soundtrack, and deep gameplay systems, Hollow Knight Silksong delivers the kind of unforgettable adventure that makes it one of the finest indie experiences on Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2. Hades 2 is Supergiant's first ever sequel. You play as Melinoe, the princess of the underworld, fighting her way through a dark mythological world to reach a powerful enemy threatening Olympus. Like the first Hades, every run is a procedurally generated gauntlet of rooms filled with enemies, and you die, come back stronger, and try again, with the story advancing through conversations with gods and characters each time. The combat is faster and more complex than the original, with more weapons, a wider set of god boons to choose from, and Arcana cards that let you customize Melinoe's baseline abilities before each run. The writing is sharp, the voice acting is exceptional, and the art is absolutely beautiful. On Switch 2, it runs at 1080p and 120 frames per second in TV mode, which is remarkable. It's bigger, more ambitious, and more replayable than the first game. If you have any tolerance for roguelikes at all, Hades 2 is the pinnacle of the genre right now. 25 incredible indie games across Switch and Switch 2, from massive Metroidvanias to chill campervan adventures. Drop a comment with your favorite or anything you think should have ranked higher. And if you haven't played Hollow Knight yet, seriously, what are you waiting for?